Aloha, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, Thank you for joining this talk story session where I feel very fortunate where I get to talk with friends who I've known over the years. And as you know, we meet and then life happens. We go in different directions. But I'm very, very fortunate to catch up with an old friend, old childhood friend, to talk story and for my good friend to share his story and how he has reached the top in the sporting world. But what I'm hoping to do with this talk story session is to inspire others to forge ahead and to pursue their goal in whatever that may be. So we're going to be sharing stuff that has helped or has motivated or what has motivated my guest to reach the top in their field. Without further ado, I'd like to well, actually, before then, sorry, I lied. Before then, I want to share a quick story about how I met my good friend here, my guest. And folks, please welcome my good friend from way back, Paul Koloi. And like a good young lad, listening to your parents, whatever they say, you follow and you go with them. And one of those places where I followed my folks when I was a youngster was to church, and church was a big part of our life as young folks. Many things happened, of course, when you go to the family functions and church and such, but one of those beautiful things was meeting this young man, Paul Koloi, and his other siblings. And this guy here, one thing I'll tell you about him that have always stuck with me was his beautiful smile. I've always known this young boy smile to have a big, beautiful smile. So yes, without further ado, please say welcome to my good friend, Paul Koloi. Hey, brother.
Thank you, mate. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for sorting this meeting out. I'm very humbled by your invitation for a chat. I mean, I was just kind of wanted to kind of catch up, but yeah, this is obviously an added bonus. But thanks for having me.
When I sent you the invite, it was like I don't know, a couple of hours later. You messaged me, and I just come back from from training. My training used to be like this, but now it's gone. I went for a walk with the kids, and I was so excited to see your message. And then, yeah, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, bro. I really appreciate it. So, brother, if you could please share a little bit about your background, where you're from, and then from there, I'd like to go into your journey.
Yeah, well, as far as journeys go, I mean, I was born on Christmas Day, 1972 in Tonga. My poor mum, obviously from a church background, thought that that was the beginning of something amazing, but sadly, it was just me, and I was born on Christmas Day, and I was the youngest of 4 children. I've got 2 brothers and 1 sister, and we grew up in Tonga. And when I turned 5, my dad was a church minister, so part of his kind of journey was to kind of move to New Zealand and sort of look after the kind of and sort of move the church to the Tongan community, which was sort of moving to New Zealand. So we lived in Auckland, and so yeah, so I didn't know how to speak English, so I went to school, and it was bit tough, I think. I don't remember much, but yeah, I went to primary school in Auckland and secondary school. So yeah, you know, looking back now that I have kids, you know, you kind of reflect about your own childhood, and I think I had the most amazing childhood, you know, because even though my dad passed away when I was 7, the church community sort of kicked in, and my uncles and other church people sort of came in and became the father figures. But you know, I don't feel like I missed out because my dad passed away.
Yes, and that was a very.
Sorry, Nissa, I've just got some my nurse has come in. Let me just pause that for a bit, and I'll come back. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Hi there.
Yeah. Are you wearing your wristband now?
No, I'm not.
You're Paul.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
25th of December. So
Yeah. This thing came off as well. Sorry.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think it's going to happen. We're coming into 7 o'clock in the morning, so people are going to do the rounds, and yeah, that's why I'm in hospital. So, yeah.
Well, let me just bring my listeners up to speed here. Paul is had an unfortunate mishap, and he's currently in hospital. And if you guys were wondering, where is he? Where is he? And he was brave enough to bless us with his time while he's in hospital recovering, or went through a checkup. But I really do appreciate his time in joining us. Yeah, let's keep going. And if you need to go, we can catch up again. But we'll talk until we have to say goodbye. So
Sure.
yeah, as I was just saying, to hear about your father passing away, it was a very sad time. I too, at the time, I think I was still a teenager, and those things of hearing about people passing away didn't quite register. So I guess it didn't hit me or even my siblings and others much later. But I do appreciate the time that we got to know your father and your family. And of course, he and my father were friends during that period as well. So it was a great time, so to speak. Those memories of things used to do, like I shouldn't talk too much about church because I might I might get a scolding from my mom. You should have listened to the malanga there, young Misa said, "Oh, mom." But thank you for that. Your siblings, briefly, I see some of their stuff online, and it's great to see how they've moved on. So it's always a blessing to catch up with friends from way back. Paul, could you please now share a little bit about your history in the sporting world? What was that thing that kicked you along? Hey, I think I could do this. How did it start for you?
Well, I mean, the rugby thing was a kind of it was interesting because, in New Zealand, when you're good at rugby, you've always been good at rugby and you kind of carry on. I wasn't really that good at rugby, like I was a very skinny kid, and, Polynesians are massive, and when I was growing up, I was not massive, I had skinny legs and an afro, and everything was a bit wrong. So, but what I did have was good ball skills. I had, I was very good with catching, and I think that's where the foundation of where the rugby sort of caught on, because when I was at sort of high school, when I was at St. Paul's, which is when you're up until you're about 15, I just made the kind of usual teams, and I wasn't setting the world on fire. I was enjoying it and just mucking around with my friends. But then I got a scholarship. Well, I didn't really get a scholarship. My brother had a coach that went to a private school, and because he was very impressed with my brother, he asked my brother to start a scholarship program, and it was a private school, so it was called St. Kentigern. And they were wanting to get some Polynesians into the team. And,
hey, bro, you went to St. Kentigern?
Yeah. Yeah.
Masi, do you know the battles that we've had against that school? I know you mentioned St. Paul, but hey, that's another story. But man, I remember those boys down there, down southeast, I think. They were very good. They were very good. So
I mean, obviously they had a lot of money, they had facilities, and I think, them branching out, and, that was the kind of first move into kind of poaching sort of Polynesian players. So, in Tonga, there's Tonga High School. So so my brother started up a thing where, they went to the school and said, if as an incentive for kids who are playing rugby, if you had really good marks and you played rugby, you could get a scholarship and come to boarding school. So, so my brother got a guy in, and then my family was sort of quite keen to kind of for me to go. And then I had a kind of uncle who was a business owner, and he paid for my fees for the first year that so I could go. And that's how I got into St. Kentigern. Yeah, it wasn't through my rugby, but I did play for the first 15. And yeah, it was a kind of interesting thing when you go to a school when there's not many Polynesians and everyone knows you're there for the rugby. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't set the world on fire there. I was okay, kind of average player. And then I left high school and I went to Australia for a year. And then I went to Tonga for a year. Surprisingly, when I went to Tonga in 1992, I went to trial. I went to a club, and they said I was too skinny. They said, so I didn't even play rugby. I played touch. So I started up a touch competition in Tonga and started playing touch with other players. And then,
hey, can I ask you?
Yeah.
I go back to that being skinny. You're right. When you as another Pacific Islander facing another Polynesians, other Pacific Islanders, for me, I looked at them and said, "Oh my gosh, those guys are big. I don't think I could tackle them." Did they ever come across you where you felt, you know what, maybe this isn't the game for me? But you talked about having the set of skills. You had to have used that, right, to really advance ahead of others that may be bigger than you.
Yeah, I mean, even at high school level, you know, yeah, even though I was skinny, yeah, the skill level was enough for me to get by. But because I wasn't playing sort of the kind of higher sort of representative level, it wasn't really a problem. I could still sort of hold my own in a kind of level that I could sort of handle. And so that was 92, 93. So 93, I went to university. My uncle in Christchurch invited me to come. He said, you need to make something of your life. You need to kind of get a degree. And, you know, like degrees were never really in my horizon, you know, because I come from a family, my family, very, very learned, and, you know, they have gone to university, but, you know, I didn't really think that was, you know, I think that was a kind of hangover from just not feeling confident, you know, about my abilities and not really stretching myself when I was at high school. So when I did go to university, so I went to university in Christchurch and I threw myself into the studies and I did really well. First semester, did really, really well. And then it sort of took a sort of hiccup in the second semester when I started making friends. And and then after I started making friends, someone said, do you want to come and play rugby league? And I had always been rugby union. And not for any particular reason, I just thought rugby league was too scary. You know, it just meant that you had to run really fast into someone running really fast at you. And that didn't appeal to me. And they said,
is that the you look at somebody, oh my gosh, they're bigger than me. I'll pass the ball.
especially the Islanders, they don't sort of move sideways. They just come straight at you. And but then, you know, because I wanted to go play rugby union in Christchurch, but there weren't many Polynesians. It was all sort of kind of sort of white European sort of Kiwis. And because we went to university, they sort of behave in a certain way at university level. It's very big on drinking and doing really stupid things. And as a sort of young Christian sort of kid who hasn't really sort of seen the world, I was just like, man, I can't handle that. So I was forced to go and join the Pacific Islanders and play, and all of them were playing rugby league. So I kind of just joined in just to kind of be a part of the group. And and then when I started playing rugby league, I quickly sort of excelled and sort of started making sort of provincial teams and making New Zealand universities, and in a short space of time sort of grew up the ranks. And then I sort of made semi-pro level in Christchurch, and and that was the sort of beginning really. And then when I sort of realized that And then when I made the semi-pro team, they put me on a weight training program. You know, I've always been tall and a big frame, but very skinny. And then one summer when I made this semi-pro team, I started training and doing weights. So you know, that's when the genes sort of started kicking in. As soon as I sort of started doing weights, my whole body shape changed. And yeah, I turned into a kind of a weird person. And yeah, sort of being sort of big and strong and fast. And yeah, so the body sort of matched the skills, you know, in a sense. Yeah.
I say that there's a couple of nice pointers in there in your talk about the culture in New Zealand. Yep, I guess we've all experienced that if you've get into that culture. And also a couple of points I want to touch on is your uncle, who I guess he could be one of those people that said that motivated you, or you mentioned you got to do something with your life, as your uncle had talked to you about. Could you touch on that as well, and how much of impact was that moment? And also later on in your university life, where you made the decision, well, you know what, let me go and join these guys, and then things started rolling from there. Was there a particular moment during that transition from rugby through university that clicked for you? You know, you got into the training program.
Yeah.
What was the like that one moment that hit you and said, hey, maybe I've got it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I say about my uncle, I say that like flippantly, like it didn't really, but he literally saved my life. You know, it's like. Yeah, because he said to me, you know, he's like, come here, because you know, I think you have, yeah, he said, there's something here for you, you know. And so he came, and so basically and we lived quite a way away from the university. So he gave me his car to take to university. Like he did so much for me. He paid for my fees. And sort of guided me, you know. He sort of played the fatherly role of kind of plucking me out of the wilderness to kind of keep me on the straight and narrow. And I think he was a sort of follower of my dad and the church and stuff. And I feel like he felt like it was his kind of time to kind of sort of play father in my life. And so when I went to university, you know, I was really into it. And you know, like when I started playing rugby and I sort of made the semi-pro team, and when I started training, and you know, when things started clicking, and that's when I sort of, I mean, I never really thought that I would be a fully fledged pro, or you know, go beyond that. You know, I think because I had never been really that. Because I didn't really excel from a young age, I just took each stage and kind of was grateful for, you know, I got to this stage. I was like, wow. And because when we were at university, there was another guy who was amazing. You know, he played for the junior Kiwis and then became a pro and went to England. And I was looking at him going, wow, imagine being like that, you know, all the while sort of doing my own little thing. And whilst I was training with that semi-pro team, I fully but I guess I'm a pleaser, you know. I wanted to please the coach, and by doing all the stuff. And but you know, when you're doing all the stuff and doing the right thing, you know, and I think I have a lot of you know, I'm really grateful for the Tongan genes, you know, because it's kind of, you know, when you do weights, when you're Polynesian, things just happen. And
Hey,
you
but
get speed.
for some people, when they do weights, oh yeah, where sometimes it doesn't happen, or the weights go somewhere else, bro.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess, you know, when you know, obviously when you're good at something and you kind of keep doing it, it sort of responds by kind of paying you back by you being better and being faster and whatever, you know. And yeah, I really took it on board. And I think when it all changed, because at 95, I was playing in that semi-pro team. And then for the Christmas 95, I went to Tonga for Christmas, and there was a trial for the Tongan team. And, you know, never in my wildest dream did I think I was going to be a Tongan international, you know. And so I went to Tonga for Christmas, and they had a trial for the Tongan team. And my village, where my mum came from, Namua, they had a team, and my uncle said to me, you know, Paul, you know, said, you know, you've been playing. Why don't you come and help the village out and play for the village? And you know, we used to go to Tonga a lot over the summers and see the family. And as a Polynesian kid going back to Tonga after living in New Zealand, being really Anglified, and you know the way you talk, your mannerism, and when you go to Tonga, you feel sort of like not a fully fledged Tongan. You know, that whole plastic Tongan thing. You know, and your cousins teasing you, and you say a word that's wrong, and so an opportunity to play for your village was just like full on, you know. It's like, and for you to kind of, so I played, and you know, like it was all the forces that, you know, the things that I kind of was fearing, you know, as a skinny kid, now that I'm sort of playing rugby league, and for a Tongan guy who didn't really feel his Tongan roots, all those kind of forces came together in one big foul swoop. And all of a sudden, like, you know, there's a whole thing in Tonga about sort of being a man, you know, and that's another sort of interesting thing about, you know, like your masculinity. And it's all, you know, it's like so when I grew up, you know, everyone thought that, you know, there's a whakaleiti, which is like a guy who wants to be a girl, you know. And in Tonga, there's a whole kind of, obviously, I don't know if the people watching this know about, but, you know, like maybe look it up, Fafafine and all that, you know, because I used to hang out with all my female cousins and cook in the kitchen. And when they said, when my male cousins will come to the bush, I was like, I don't want to go to the bush, man. I just want to eat.
So yeah, that's the thing, right? Eating is just as important as hanging out.
Exactly.
I'm glad you found the kitchen, brother.
Yeah,
yeah. Was it can you just briefly just go back and touch base on that transition when you went back to Tonga, and you kind of, you know, they looked at you kind of different. Hangiago, you know, the you living in overseas and that Tonganness. I know a lot of people talk about that, but if you could just briefly touch on that, was that much of an issue for you, or
not really? I mean, you know, because I mean, this is all part of my personality. You know, I just use it as a, you know, like I just joke around about it. You know, it's like, and it never really, you know, you just. I think when it's about how you feel about yourself. And, you know, I didn't really feel comfortable when I was younger, sort of going to Tonga, because I didn't really kind of feel properly Tongan. And I think that kind of sort of got in the way of my enjoyment of sort of going to Tonga. You know, I often sort of thought, oh, but hanging with my cousins was amazing, you know, and that has kind of informed how I sort of bring up my own kids, you know. And like most things, you know, you don't know anything until you have your own kids and what they mean to you, and how that impacts on your life, really. Yeah.
So true. Thank you for that. So let's continue with the connection you had with rugby, and of course with the trial in Tonga. Were you an immediate addition to the team, or did you have to go for another trial?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because after the trial, I played really well, and you know, my family are massive league fans, and you know, my uncle was the kind of president of Tonga Rugby Union, Tonga Rugby League. You know, my uncle was the manager. You know, so you know, my family were deeply rooted in the kind of rugby league. And when the team was named, I was not in the team. So, and that was a big shock. I didn't feel like it was that much of a shock for me. You know, obviously I kind of played well, but you know, it's like the coach chooses the team, but there was a massive uproar. But you know, I felt because I had family in in the setup, I couldn't say anything, you know. It's like, and that's another problem with the Pacific, you know, it's like the corruption of things, you know, and, you know, when someone's dad is the coach or uncle, obviously all the Cuzzy bros are in the team. And so when I didn't get picked, I thought, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. And then my uncle said he's not going to worry about it. But then the committee sort of got around and said, I need to be in the team. And that was kind of a bit embarrassing, you know, because obviously you want to make the team in the first round, you know, you're either in the team or you're not. But so yeah, so I got picked. So I think because it was 9-a-side, and there was this is all to do with the Super League era, and Tonga was invited to the Super World Nines in Fiji. So Australia.
What year was this again?
This was 1996.
96. Okay. Yeah.
And so I went. They chose me. You know, I got included in the team finally, and we went and it was in Fiji, and it was like a massive thing. You know, there was a lot of money pumped into it. All the big countries were there, and yeah, and it was all televised, and yeah, I played really, really well, and and then yeah, I mean, playing for Tonga was the kind of pinnacle for me. I mean, like I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would get to that level.
Yeah, could you? I want to push you forward a little bit to that moment when you're on that massive stage representing Tonga as a child of the beautiful island. That national anthem, for any country, for any sports person, when they're there, there's a very, very, very special moment when the national anthem is on.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, share with us your feeling? What was it like to stand there with your brothers in arms?
Yeah, I mean, well, well, the first thing was, you know, because the first time I got to listen to the national anthem wearing the Tongan jersey wasn't a fully fledged test match, and we were still in Tonga, so we played a match before we left, and the King was there, and so, you know, the King was there, my family were there, and when the music started, you know, I just looked up to the sky, you know.
Beautiful, brother. Beautiful. Yep. Thank you for that, brother. For a lot of us.
Yeah, I was thinking about my dad. You know, I was thinking about my dad and sort of thinking about him watching me and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was really emotional.
Can you share with us a little bit more about your father and how much, not only his teaching as a priest or leader of the church, but also as a father, because I know all our fathers influence us, but how did you see him as a father figure at home, but also out there in the community, and how much did he mean to you?
You know, my thoughts about my dad is mainly retrospective, because I only kind of hear about the stories, you know, and I continue to hear stories about him from when I meet people and they say, oh, I remember your dad. But, you know, like if I can sort of think back about memories of my dad, I can only remember about 3 or 4 instances. You know, one is he was quite tall, I think. And
yes, he was.
He used to walk us to school. And I remember having to take 25 steps to his one, you know, he had to kind of, and he was really into fitness as well. And he was always wanted to be fit, because I think, you know, for him, it was the inside of you should match what's on the outside. So, you know, you need to be as fit and strong as healthy, you know, all the facets of yourself, spiritual and health-wise and mental, need to be kind of in top shape. So, And the other one is the discipline. I just remember him being angry once and hitting all us kids back in the day when that was all good. But yeah, and then, you know, and then obviously the church and massive crowds whenever he was preaching. But you know, and all us kids, we all seem to have found work that has meant that we are dealing with people and sort of in our own small way of trying to spread a message of community and togetherness.
Your father was certainly a man of wise words, and I do remember him as well. Again, not a lot because you're still young. You are correct. Your father was very tall. And the stories that my father would share about your father was obviously when they were kids and then going through the church and that. So his legacy, brother, you know, it's far-reaching. And even people here in Hawaii, I've come across people who know of him, and of course, the church as well. So your father definitely left a legacy, and yeah, wonderful man. Thank you for sharing this story, brother. Yeah, but to get to the top in any field, the sacrifice. Could you share some thoughts on the sacrifices that you made to be able to get to the top and to maintain that level of professionalism? Because as you know, once we're at the top, there's only one way down, right? Or one way to go, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so after making Tonga, I came back after that tournament, and then my uncle said to me, "Why don't you stay in Tonga this year? You know, it's like, you know, come and help the team out. And I think you need a sort of break. You need to kind of have it was such a perfect thing for me to do because I stayed in the village and I played for the village. And our team had not been doing very well for the last couple of years after being quite good for a long time. And then they were going through a dip. So I came and joined the team, and so it was a magnificent sort of opportunity to kind of share all the kind of skills and knowledge that I had sort of picked up in New Zealand and pass it on. And when you're training in Tonga, you know, it's not just you and the team, it's all the young kids come and they run around and you know, right. They just want to watch or join in and be a part of the kind of, and that's the wonderful thing about the community of sport, you know, it's not just about you. And when you finish, someone in the village, you know, everyone of the families would cook a meal and bring it, and you're all eating, you know, and there's something about just, you know, the mundane sort of things that people take for granted, like just finishing training and eating. But because you're doing it as a team, you know, there's a kind of energy and a spirit that really holds you together.
Indeed.
When I finished from Tonga, I went to New Zealand, and, you know, because I wanted to kind of take it to the next level. You know, I knew there was another World Nines coming, and that was in Australia. And I thought I needed to be at my best, you know, and I thought, you know, I knew myself that I couldn't train myself to get to any level. So I got a personal trainer, someone I knew, and I asked him, who had worked with other people. So I asked him, can he help me get into a position where I could, you know, put my best foot forward. And
that's a very smart move there, Paul. Very smart move to seek extra help.
Yeah, I mean, I think in hindsight, you know, it was, but you know, like no one's telling you all these things, and you know, and it would be kind of helpful, you know, if someone said to me, you know, I think you know, I don't know how it happened, but it happened, and it was a kind of lucky chance thing that happened. But you know, sometimes you make your own luck. When I remember, you know, sort of going to see my friends and going to the park by myself to do, you know, obviously I see my trainer, but he'll give me sort of tasks to do, and I'd have to go to the park, and you know, it's a kind of lonely game. It's just kind of running up and down, and but you know, you have to have your eye on the prize and just think about, and you know, what I sort of was visioning is, if I'm training, you know, I'm just hoping that the person I'm marking is not training as hard. So, you know, you just want to be the best that you can, really. And and maybe I've been watching documentaries of films. You know, you think about, what would that guy be doing? You know, what is he thinking? You know, obviously I have to stop thinking about KFC and think about other stuff. But yeah.
Hey, KFC is also made, but hey, yes, be careful on your food intake. Oh, that's also, no, I think that was a very smart move in seeking the additional help to go
Yeah.
to the next level. And you did that. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful idea. Yeah.
So I went to the World Nines, and someone I met, they said, "You're going to the World Nines." My friend, he is an agent for Wigan Warriors, you know, Wigan in England, who are one of the best teams in the world. And I, you know, like, you know, because of the, you know, how I was talking about, I was never really that good. And when, you know, someone says they're from Wigan, you know, that's like Manchester United saying, you know, so I just went, great, good to meet you. And then out the door. And so, and then I went to Australia and played, you know, with the Tongan team. And then, I played really well. I played really, really well. And I came back, and then I had 3 offers from the Auckland Warriors. There was another team in Adelaide, and obviously, and then from Wigan, Wigan.
Fantastic.
So, and because the Auckland Warriors were, you know, it's like, then when Wigan came, you know, obviously you can't sort of say no to that kind of offer. So, and that was in 1997, and. But I had some visa problems, like lots of Polynesians. So I didn't make the start of the season. So I got my plane ticket, and So that's when, you know, that's when it got real. You know, it's like, you know, I played for Tonga, but when you kind of go into that next level of being a professional, so. I flew, and the flight was like 28 hours. I didn't sleep, and I arrived. And because when I was arriving, there was a guy, Vainga Malo, who's one of the most famous wingers at the time.
Wait. Who's that guy? Hey, Inga, bless you, brother. I mean, just as a sidetrack there, you know, when you're watching other great sports players out there, of course you come across another guy, and yep, you must have some good challenges against Inga there.
Well, no, he was leaving. He was leaving Wigan Warriors. So when he left, I was arriving. So, you know, the way the press conference was happening. So when I arrived, I went straight into a press conference. And one of the reporters was like, how does it feel to be Vainga Tungamala's replacement? And I said, can I just get back on the plane and go home? So I was like, wow, okay. So I thought I was just coming. And I think that was kind of part of the problem, you know, when you go to a big team, when there's just big time players, you know, there's an expectation. And obviously if you're coming overseas, and there's going to be expectation. So, you know, in that team was Jason Robinson, Andy Farrell, Chris Radlinski. I mean, all these guys are kind of the cream of the crop. And so when I came, I had a press conference, and then I went to training, you know, after being on a flight for 28 hours. And so I went and did a bit of running for training, and I saw all these guys that I watch TV. And, you know, obviously when players move around, because they're good and they have been good for a long time, they just join in. But I was just staring at him. I was like, wow, he's talking to me. And then the ball hit my head. I was like, oh, sorry, I'm supposed to be training.
Oh, that's amazing. Your reflection of that moment, seeing those superstars, mate, like me and many others, I'm assuming when they see their superstar hero, there's the moment of going, are we in the same room? Are we sharing the same space? But you're a superstar as well, man. I mean, you're at the top there in the, with your game, playing with those top players.
Next day, they said I had to play a game. So I had to play a game
Wow.
for the second team. So
Yeah.
just so I can sort of run off the jet lag and yeah. So I played a game for their second team, and I scored a try. I don't remember sort of setting the world on fire, but you know, if you
Wow.
play a game and you score a try, I think that's classed as okay. So and then but the way it worked when I first arrived, I was there for a couple of weeks, and then because there was a World Club Challenge, so all the top teams in England would come and play all the top teams in Australia. So after 2 weeks in England, I had to get on a plane with the whole Wigan team and fly to Australia and play all the kind of teams. So we played Canterbury Bankstown, Brisbane Broncos, and Canberra Raiders. You know, like wow, yeah, and that's where, you know, my sort of so the first game against Canterbury Bankstown, um, I was on the bench, and you know, I've got some injuries and stuff, so I had to tape my shoulders and both my ankles, so I was all ready to go, and then I didn't. So we won that game, and I didn't get to play, so they didn't use me, and I was like, it was so embarrassing going back and changing. It was like all taped up, all dressed up, and no party to go to. So and so and then that was that game, and then the next game was against Brisbane Broncos, and I was on the bench again, but I came on at half time. But at half time, we were down about 25-0 or something ridiculous like that. We were getting plastered, and so I came on, and I did one good thing. I made a break and I passed it, and you know, out of all the good things that happened on that day, I did one of those good things, and the next game, they put me in the starting lineup. And, you know, when you make the starting lineup, that's when you know, yeah. And that was the kind of turning point of my kind of time at Wigan, because not having being a professional for that long and not living a professional lifestyle as far as rugby was concerned, I couldn't deal. You know, I couldn't sleep that night, the night before, and I was hanging out with the other players, but you know, everyone there knew what they were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I just needed to go to sleep early and look after myself. And we had a sort of 3 p.m. kickoff. So when I went to sleep, I didn't sleep at all. So I woke up tired. And, you know, some days when you're playing, you just kind of have a feeling. There's a positive vibe about what you're about. And I just didn't feel right that morning. And then come the warm up. Normally, I love a warm up, especially when you've got a big game and there's TV and stuff. You know, you just kind of, you get swept into the whole kind of thing. And even in the warm up, I didn't feel good. And I knew something was not right. But, you know, you kind of fight on and think you're going to play yourself out of this kind of sort of dip that you're feeling. And sure enough, when the game started, it just was a nightmare. Yeah, so, you know, they had Laurie Daly in that, you know, they had all the top Australian stars, you know, like maybe 60%, 70% of that team played for Australia.
That year was a good year for the Australian team. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I had a shocker, absolute shocker, made several mistakes, and, you know, they were scoring tries for breakfast. And then at half, maybe not even a half time. Yeah, I got the big hook. They pulled me off the field, and this was live. You know, this is live to the world. And my, you know, the trainer that I had, he was at the park. He came to watch me play, and he knew that. So after the game, he came and just got straight into my face. He goes, "You need to erase that from your kind of memory, and don't let this be the defining moment of your career." Yeah. So yeah, that was a kind of, and I sort of went into my shell a bit there, you know, and that was a kind of harsh reality, you know, that you're in this industry, that you're only as good as your last game. You know, it's like whatever has gone before counts for nothing. You know, it's about the then and there. So yeah, that took a bit of time to kind of come out of.
Yeah, so true there, brother. You and many others who were there at the top, that one game, and your trainer is so right with, don't let that game, don't stay put on that platform, man.
Mm-hmm.
The game is done and dusted. You gotta move on, and right, don't let that game define who you are as a top professional player. For many who get to the top, going down could be very, very detrimental, painful. And I have seen a lot of stories where players have, unfortunately, could not uh, could not cope with that. Were there moments in perhaps this particular experience with you? Were there moments that you felt maybe it's time to give up? For me, it sounds like you were just starting.
So yeah, we came back to England, and I didn't get picked for the return matches, and then so that bit of the season, and then I got picked again. So the next big game I played was against London Broncos, and I was marking Martin O'Fire, who
Wow.
was exactly, who was a Wigan legend, and
Yeah.
and something happened on that game. Someone tackled me, this Australian guy. He picked me up, a massive guy, picked me up and just threw me on the ground. And basically the ball lodged into my stomach and dislocated my ribs and sort of ripped my ribs out. And then my
Wow.
ribs went back into place. So I had, dislocated ribs. And then I went off the field to kind of get some treatment. So I thought I just needed to have a shower and do my hair and go home. But they wrapped tape around me and told me to go back on the field.
Oh.
Yeah. So I mean, I couldn't even breathe properly. But this is your job,
Yeah.
and you do what they say. And yet again, played another, and then came back and just was absolutely shocking after that. And I think that was the last time I played for Wigan. And then after that, they kind of put me on the kind of heap after that, and so I was playing sort of for the reserve grade for the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know, because I had an agent, but my agent never sort of kept an eye on me. So I didn't realize in my contract, I had a 2-year contract, but the second year is only on the proviso that you play 75% of the first grade games. So you have to play most of the games. And if you don't play those, then your visa is cut. So you just have to go.
Wow.
And after the season finished, and I thought, everything was hunky-dory, I was driving. And then on the radio, it said, these current players for Wigan will be returning to New Zealand. And my name was called out on the radio. I didn't even get a call from the club. And I nearly crashed the car, I was like, and I drove straight to the club, and I said, I just heard on the radio. And they said, oh yeah, sorry, we were supposed to kind of talk to you about that. So, when you think about sort of defining moments, that, I mean, I don't even look at that as a kind of sort of, as a sort of, well, there's several things I'm sad about. I'm not sad about that. I'm sad that I didn't sort of make use of my time there. I work, getting to the top is the easy part. Staying at the top is where the difficulty lies, because you need to keep the motivation, because when you're going up, you're just hungry,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what sets the people that get there and the people that stay. The people that stay are still driven, something else is driving them, it's like, and because I wasn't sort of, I just played for fun, and when fun became my job, I couldn't deal with it, and there was no people to kind of train with and laugh with, everyone was there. It was their job. So, so that was kind of, it was a kind of weird thing. So obviously I finished. And then when I went back to New Zealand, that was a tough time. And because I was on the news going out, to, you know, I was interviewed on the news, and there was no news on the way back, and
Yeah.
no news. So I just went into I went back and stayed with my mum and my sister, and I just sort of stayed indoors for about 3 months and didn't leave the house. Yeah. And I don't particularly sort of remember it as a kind of mental health thing, but obviously it was. And I think I sort of blocked that out in my mind now as a sort of safety mechanism, not to bring me down. But obviously when I was there, it was. And then my old club, my university club in New Zealand rang me, and they asked me how I was. And I said, oh, all good, all good. And they said, don't lie, man. Just, we're sending you a plane ticket. Come down. And so they sent me a ticket. And then I started playing again. And, but you know, it's like when you're kind of gone to those hefty heights and you go back and play again. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough to kind of, you feel like a failure, you know, and yeah, that was tough. And then after that, my brother sent me to Australia he got me a sort of training, he got me to train with the Brisbane Broncos. He said, you know, just come and train with the Brisbane Broncos. They just let anyone come, just come and just kind of go back, and, you know, they know who you are. You know, you played against them, you know, just the year before. Just try and sort of, so I did that. I went and trained with the Broncos. I didn't get picked up by the Broncos, but I got picked up by a team in North Queensland. So I went, it was semi-pro. I got a job, and I worked as a sort of care worker for disabled kids and adults. And I used to sort of go and look after them and do sleepovers. And that was a lovely thing, you know, I think, sort of working and giving me some purpose, that it wasn't just about the rugby, but I could still play rugby, do that, but I could do other stuff as well. And, but, you know, so I got myself back into some sort of rhythm again. And then Tonga sort of rang me and said, we'd like you to be in the World Cup team. And I was like, wow, you know, it's like, and all the while, you know, players were playing in the NRL. Yeah,
That's amazing
so,
that you got back into the team, brother. I mean,
yeah,
that's all back to your training and your commitment. Excellent.
Yeah.
And their time in
Yeah.
Australia
And
seemed
then
like to push you forward again.
absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, because I was living away from my family, I had to look after myself and, yeah, do my own thing and paying the bills and, yeah, just living a life. And you know, it was kind of weird to kind of go straight to the top in a short space of time and then come straight down, and then rebuilding again was really good, you know. And so in the World Cup, I got picked, and then I thought I should. My brother was living in Tonga, so he said to me, "Come to Tonga. I need to train you. I need to get you into some sort of fitness level, so when you go to the World Cup, you're ready." And so I went to Tonga, and that's where I met my wife. She's English, but she worked for a TV company, and they were making a TV program in Tonga. And so I met her there, and I was only there for a couple of weeks before we head off. And my wife was in Tonga for 6 months. And so we went and yeah, I mean, once again, you know, I was just young and stupid. You know, I didn't take the World Cup seriously again. You know, you get caught up, you know, because other players, you know, because Tonga was, you know, it wasn't like the Tongan team now, really serious. You know, it was like some of the boys were just kind of partying, you know, and you get swept up, and, you know, so I was not really focused enough. And so I played, and, you know, I was in the starting lineup. I was the fullback, and I was even the leader of the haka, you know, and that was one of the proudest moments of my life, you know, not only to kind of be in the Tongan team, but, you know, because not many of the Tongan team can speak Tongan. So I was only there was in a group of 30. There was only about 6 or 7 of us who could speak Tongan, and because I had been playing for Tonga for a while, not many could do the haka, the sipitau. And so I was you know, because I thought, no, obviously they're going to get someone really hard to lead the haka, because they can't let this idiot lead it. So I'd teach the team before the meals. We'd do a sort of run through, and I'd do it, and then when it came closer to the match day, I said to the kind of hardest guy in the team, I said, you better lead this. And he goes, I can't lead this, man. You have to lead it. And yeah, and then it sort of fell on me to kind of lead it. And yeah, it was really, really awesome. And I really, for all of that, I mean, I think I was being too hard on myself, but it's like you always wish, and I think when you look back at yourself, you always wish you could do a bit more, but you can only do what you can do at the time, and that's another thing, when you get your time, you kind of go for it hard, and go for it like there's no tomorrow, because there literally is no tomorrow.
That is so true. That is so true. Of all the sacrifices that not only you make, but your family, and to get to that top, it has to be a wonderful feeling, brother. It has to be a wonderful feeling. Could you share with us? Yeah. Could you share with us a defining moment in your rugby career, rugby league career, that you, if you were to tell your kids, this is that moment that would define your career in the international stage, what would that be?
When you watch rugby, the presentation of the jersey is always a big thing. It's like when you work so hard to kind of get something, and then when it comes to you and it's kind of offered in a tangible way and it's passed on to you. But, when it's passed on to you, that is a representative of the journey. Lots of things get passed, so your family pass on things. And through that passing of that first jersey, everything that came before comes with that jersey. So when you put it on.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for that. I know you are at a very precious time right now, being at the hospital with your checkup. But again, thank you so much for giving us this smidgen of a time to share your story of when it all began and the journey going up and then the journey going the other way. But, but it sounds like, I mean, this story is very inspirational, because here you are in a moment where you're quite low, but you're still upbeat and sharing your story. And to me, that's very inspirational. Where else do you go when you've gone to the top? As everybody knows, there's only one way down, but when you're down here, you've also risen and you've achieved a lot. And outside of the sporting field, you have a family, and looking at those TikTok moves you do online, brother, it seems like you're on a good space, and your family are there to support you, and they've supported you from day one, and they still support you as well. So it's a big time, big time. Thank you. Malo apito giagoe, brother. It was a real pleasure to catch up with you, and also to talk about
and it's funny, isn't it? It's like I think of the kind of the peaks and troughs of my life, and the troughs are only there to kind of inform you of the path that you take for the next step, because it's like, but ultimately you have to have a happy sort of positive disposition, because that is the only way that you can sort of see clear paths, is by sort of having your eyes open and your heart open, because that's when you can find the goodness, and the goodness only opens if you remain open.
Awesome. Thank you so much there, Paul. I really appreciate those uplifting words for our friends out there. And I would just like to close.
I mean, I live in London. I just want to say, because I live in London, and being a Polynesian here in London, is the most amazing thing. It's so positive, you know. It's like when I'm home, no one really sort of says anything. But here, like, oh, I'm from Togo. It's like, what are you doing here? It's like, exactly, why am I doing here? But it's just wonderful, you know. It's like, and it just is a positive thing. And you know, I work in the community in schools, and yeah, and I've taken all the kind of lovely things about our culture and our people and sort of spread it here, and it's a wonderful thing. Yeah.
Wow. See, you are very inspirational. That's beautiful, sharing the Pacific Island culture over there. And I just hope the weather continues to stay warm for you over there, and
Yeah.
everything will go your way. Right now, I'd just like to close this conversation, this talk story with our brother Paul, and many blessings to him as he is on his in the hospital with his checkup, and I hope that goes well. Look, I gotta say again that this is very inspirational. So thank you, brother, for your thoughts and for sharing those wonderful, wonderful words. But before we say good night and goodbye, there's one little thing that I want my guests to do after this. I'm asking them. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
let me close this, brother. I know you're very busy. There's just one thing that I'm asking my guests to do is to film themselves eating a food item that they really enjoy. Hey, us Pacific Islanders, we love food. Or cook it. You gotta film yourself cooking it, and then having a feast on that food item. So, Paul, make sure you film that and then send it to us. Okay?
Will do.
We'll do. Okay. Ofatwe, thank you again so much.
Ofatu. Malo
Okay.
abito, eh?
Thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your time. I wish you well, and may that moment when you are motivated, may that take you to the top. And thank you for sharing and for inspiring. Aloha.
Aloha.